So we've identified a set of shared priorities, and there's capital that wants to come in, but it can't come in the abstract. It needs a pipeline of investable deals. When we talk about a pipeline, any fund is looking at a pipeline, meaning what specifically am I going to invest in? What business enterprises, what real estate projects, et cetera. And so this is really not an abstract exercise. We have to have what you call a pipeline of investable deals. So tell us what features we need to have in a pipeline.
Well, the most important thing about a pipeline is it has to add up to the shared priority. So if the shared priority is about growing small businesses, you don't want a pipeline full of housing deals. And if the shared aspiration, the priority is around multifamily rental housing, then a pipeline full of single family doesn't add up either. So the first thing that we say about a pipeline is it's got to reflect the shared priority, and the way we make it do that is by setting what we call threshold criteria. So if there is a geographic area and there's a population of focus in the shared priority, then the deals that go into the pipeline should be aimed at those parameters. And then we have a set of what we call prioritization criteria, which say if we had $10 million and a deal had this, this, and this, we would prefer it over one that didn't have. So it's kind of a scoring system informally. And the thing about a pipeline, and you can see it here, is that people get very focused on doing hard deals. And in community investment, most deals are hard. So why exactly should we do a group of deals or think about a group of deals? And the answer is a whole bunch of reasons. One is there are economies of scale. And if you think about deals in groups, you also are more likely to understand what has to change in your context. What are the places where deals go to die, that if you really thought about them systematically, you would be able to influence? Sometimes it's really simple things, sometimes it's big policy changes, but looking at deals in isolation doesn't get you that. Another reason to think about the pipeline is it allows you to see which geographies or sub-areas of your aspiration are really being well served or better served by the existing system, and where do you have to start from scratch and really cause deals to come together? Where maybe are the skills and capacities that are needed to do those deals not in your ecosystem? So you may have to go on a treasure hunt and find those kinds of skills elsewhere or help them grow locally. And we've seen quite a lot of that. We've also seen that if you're going to aggregate capital and bring together a lot of investors, in order for them to do the kind of due diligence that would allow them to start making a different kind of investment geographically or by issue, it's good to see that it's going to be worth their while, that they have more than one thing to do, and the pipeline can help them do that.
So how does one go about identifying investable deals? And actually, how far down the diligence rabbit hole do you have to go in order to qualify it as a pipeline?
So it depends on the place. And what we found is that pipelines come together in different ways, but they almost always start with what we call an opportunity spotter. And in Detroit, we had a lady who was the informal mayor of a neighborhood that we were really interested in. And she had a pipeline in her head. There were 8 deals that she walked around thinking, if we could only get mixed-use development in these 8 places along the corridor, we would be able to revitalize our neighborhood. So it was not really a pipeline because there was no control of the site, there was no financing, there was no developer, there were not any of the things that make a deal move. But there was that first step of, I think there really ought to be a something over here. We found the same thing in Appalachia. We worked with a regional group that was covering a big area, multiple states, and they didn't really have a pipeline when we started working with them. And we started thinking about, okay, do you not have opportunities, or is something happening after the opportunity? What we realized was they had plenty of opportunities all over Appalachia, but they didn't have the second step of pipeline development, which is what we call deal framing. So here's a place over there, and something should go there. But what's the thing? And so the deal framer, that's the person who can say, it could be a hotel. The hotel could be this big. Here's what the zoning would allow. Here's what the tourism patterns in the place might support. And so the deal framer translates that opportunity into a deal that might be financeable. And then from there, you have more of the traditional financial due diligence process, where a bank or another financial intermediary, like a community development financial institution, can come in and think about what's the structure of the deal that's required. But if you don't get past those first two steps, it's impossible. In the purple line, what they found was that they had the purple line geography. They knew exactly where it was going to go. For 5 years, absolutely nothing happened. And then they hired a woman who had been a developer, and she went around to talk to people who could be developing deals in that area. And she said, how come nothing's happening? And it turned out that they didn't believe that the purple line was actually going to get constructed. Mm-hmm. There had been many, many delays. She brought them the information about what was really going to move and was able to kick off the development of a pipeline by bringing some money for pre-development to the first movers. It said, you want to start moving things? Here's what you can get as support from us. That led to a process where more than 1,000 units got into the pipeline. Similarly, she looked at the area along the corridor. She realized there was a lot of church-owned land. She went to the churches and said, you need those big parking lots? Wouldn't it be nice to have affordable housing there? And she kicked off a sub-pipeline of church-owned land. So the pipeline is the kind of general construct of what is needed for the shared priority, but there may be a set of segments underneath that can be individually cultivated, and then they add up to the shared priority.
So at the beginning of the process, when you're in the sort of capital absorption framework and you're just trying to get started, you're not trying to get your arms around 100% of the pipeline. You're trying to get your arms around a set of illustrative but specific opportunities. Is it like, I don't know, is there a rule of thumb, like 5% of the pipeline, 50% of the pipeline ultimately? Like, you know, how much do you have to know before you can go forward?
Well, what we say is that you want to figure out what's going on without you. And the fact is that if enough is going on without you, you have to ask yourself, why am I needed here? Mm-hmm. Usually what we find is that there are some pieces of the aspiration that are moving. Great. All we have to know is that they're on their own. Then we're looking for where are the areas where we're going to focus and make a contribution, because we have the but for us, this is not happening. And there you dig deep, because those are the places where you don't want just an illustrative deal. You want to actually figure out, how am I going to get deals done that add up to this aspiration?
So there's a really important point inside of that, which is if the deals were going to happen anyway, which, by the way, are the lower risk, easier to predict what your return will be, and more viable ones because the market would be doing it, really clear that you're trying to fill the gap. This is impact first, higher risk, probably lower return. That's its point. Mm-hmm. Because the market would already take care of the other stuff.
Right, and that's why we talk about threshold criteria, that if it isn't affordable housing, right, if it isn't the harder to serve immigrant entrepreneurs, if it isn't the climate resilient infrastructure, then it's not community investment. So we're pumping the water uphill.